What's up YouTube? Coming up right now we have a new series, first player, first cab off the rank, Tom Green. Stay tuned. How's it going guys? Now just a little intro. This is a bit of a extension of what we usually run in our Patreon pre-season Doctor's Daily Dose. This isn't exactly that, but what I'm going to try to do is cover a lot of the players that we were thinking of covering in that series that we will not be doing this year just due to time constraints and a few off-field issues with the lads. So without divulging any further, we're going to jump straight into Tom Green, who's the first player I'm going to be discussing, unless Chizo throws this out in a strange order, but I don't know why he would. He's not evil like that, right? We're going to talk about Tom Green. Now Tom Green, I've got it up here, but my face cam sort of gets away from it, but you can see Tom Green, $621,500. Now he played 19 games last season, missing a total of four games for the year, for an average of 111.2. You have that right here. None of his games were affected by injury, and the current ownership is approximately 21.3% at the time of recording. So what do we have to talk about on Tom Green? What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a few interesting statistics that I was able to locate, then we can go through some positives, and then we can go through some negatives, and we can make up our mind at the end. So I've got a few tabs here to help me out. We're going to start off by looking at Kieran Briggs. Now Kieran Briggs played 11 games last year and missed 8. You would think with the dominant ruckman, Tom Green could potentially show signs of improvement. Kieran Briggs was pretty good in the games that he played. Now the worry is, what if he only plays half a season? Is he reliant on Kieran Briggs? And the answer is not at all. As we see down here, calculated via Fan Footy, he averaged 111.5 with Briggs, 110.8 without him. No real correlation. I think we can essentially rule that out. That is interesting. Usually players do benefit more from their consistent ruckman or their first ruckman being in the game and being fit. That obviously makes sense, especially for a midfielder. But in this case, not a big deal. He can go find the footy with any ruckman, no matter who it is. And you can see here, some of these disposal numbers are just disgusting. A lot of 38 to 39. And yeah, I mean, I'm going to struggle to not put Tom Green into my team after this, I feel. The other interesting statistic is he's actually already a very high time on ground player. He averaged 106 minutes per game on field. So that is calculated. I mean, you can calculate just here, 2015 for the season by the looks of it. You can see a little patch here in the middle. 2 games leading into the bye for a 77 and 127. 2 games following the bye prior to his injury, 128 and a 73. These minutes were all in the 90s. Everything else for the season was 100 or more. I get a feeling these spike scores against Fremantle and Melbourne is enough to drag these up to about a 100 average, but below what he did get. So you could argue anything below 100 minutes and you're getting into a speculative territory. Is he going to play less minutes per game than last season? I wouldn't imagine so. Is he going to play many more? I also wouldn't imagine so. So we're probably looking at somewhere around the 106 mark again. But you can see there are a lot of games here where he goes over 110. The first 2 of the season is a good example there. We got one in the middle against Richmond, and then later on against Sydney and Port Adelaide. So these games, if you look at when he goes 110 plus in minutes, we've got a 134, 106, a 118 there against Sydney, an 89 only against Richmond is quite surprising, 126 against Sydney again, 129 against Port Adelaide, and then we finish with a 145 against Carlton. So the high minute games obviously result in higher scores. Could he do that more often? I mean, look, I think the sub hundreds are anomalies as much as the sort of 115, 100, 115 are anomalies as well on the other end of things. So let's just say it evens out to about the 106 to 108 mark again, and I don't see much improvement there for Tom Green, but I don't see much regression either. So where does the improvement come from? What are the pros to a Tom Green type of player who has already now broken out in his, his 4th season? So an 89.2 average in 2022, now up to 111.2. That is a big breakout. 4th year for Tom Green. Now, he is young. As this shows, it's his 5th season coming up. He's young. He's in his prime. Players' primes are starting a lot earlier at the moment, and his junior numbers and possession totals in the juniors, that's translating. He was a largely contested player. That's translated as well. Everything seems to have translated to AFL level, and he's still getting better. So you could say, but judging by this here, 72, 79, 89, 111, where to this year? I would argue that he has the capabilities and the game, the SuperCoach game, not talking about his skill or whether he does get there or not, but with the game that he has, the contested possession style, obviously he's been likened to Clayton Oliver in the past. I would say he's got the capabilities for a 120 average. Whether that's this year, next year, 3 years, 4 years down the track, I couldn't tell you, but he has those capabilities. He's not someone who relies on outside ball. He's not someone who relies on entirely inside ball. We can see it work both ways. He just gets the ball a lot, almost most in the league, and he uses it at an inconsistent rate. So we might talk about that in a moment, but the early fixtures is a big positive as well. So we see this round. So Collingwood versus GWS, we're going to see what that presents us. And if that is a score 110 plus, we can tick that off. Move into the next 2 games, in which he's got North Melbourne and West Coast. Now, these 2 fixtures last season, they heralded inconsistent results. So a 77 last season against North Melbourne, 117 the season prior, and a 60 the season prior to that. And then against West Coast, 106, 102, 123 in his last 3 matches against them. I sort of pick him as someone who would be a bit of a flat track bully. So these scores kind of confuse me a little bit. The 2021 scores, I mean, he was inconsistent as anything though back then. It's good to see a couple of tons from him in 22 against these teams. The low score in 2023, look, you could point to a number of reasons. I mean, for starters, it was played in Tasmania. But essentially, I'm going to look at this and say this may be the easiest early fixture in the entire game. The problem is he comes to a screaming hold after that and hits his round 3 bye. So it's easy fixture, and then miss. Yeah, in that round 3 spot there. Then he comes back out against Gold Coast, St Kilda, Carlton, Brisbane, Sydney. So essentially, I don't think the fixture is overly hard, but those first 2 games, you could really look to bank some points against 2 really easy opposition. Or if you don't bank points, and if he does score subpar like he has in the past against these guys, you're looking at potentially a price drop prior to his bye, at his bye, because his price will change by round 3, and that could leave you in a bit of a sticky situation. I mean, if you're selecting him, you're pretty much choosing him for the entire season, but you just don't want to be faced with a situation with 40 trades. Someone's about to move in price, or he has already moved in price. Could be a high break even, could be a low break even. I just think it's tricky with that early buy. So he essentially has those 2 buys really early on, but we're going to tackle those in the negatives. He did average 120 post buy last season. So you can see here 2 low scores, 2 subtons here against Hawthorn and Brisbane. Besides that, it was essentially a free run. So that's their high score. So where was it? Did he have any subtons? He had the 1 against Hawthorn post buy. So 173 against Hawthorn, 1 score of 73. It wasn't a score of 173. But besides that, 128, 126, 129, 119, 145. That is an outstanding average. He has shown us that he has the run of form to go 120 for a sustained period. Could he do it for an entire season? Obviously, that is TBD, but I think he's definitely more than capable. And this sort of lines up with GWS having a much better crack at things. So their start to the season was as inconsistent as he was. As we can see here, 2 subtons there. Then we have another 3, 4 subtons in 4 games there. Inconsistent. And then when GWS got better, we started seeing results. So will they carry on their form from last season, or will it be a little bit of a mixed bag again? Because I think that is important in terms of Tom Green and how he goes on from last season and what momentum he carries on as well. Now, his high possession game style should result in a high floor. Only 3 games were sub 95 last season. We can pick them out here. There was a 77 against North, which is uncharacteristic. A 73 against Hawthorn. Again, not one that you would peg for a low score. There might have been a tag involved there. I'll see if I can locate that one. So it looks like, yeah, matched up on Nash. So probably a soft tag going on in that one, at least a cooler roll from Nash there. But I think all in all, you're probably looking at someone with a high floor, about a 95 plus floor. You could see him tagged to sub 95, but you could see any player in the competition tagged to sub 95. So whether that's enough of an issue for you to avoid him, it's not personally for me. I think you're probably, no matter what big midfielder you're signing up for, I think you're signing up for a tag. Even Liberatore got tagged last year. He shared a midfield with Bont, Bailey Smith, McRae, Treloar, etc. So everyone is capable of getting a tag at some point. On to some negatives. Is he injury prone? Now, I only really noticed this when I was looking at his 4 seasons and how young he was and how he was coming into his prime. He hasn't actually ever strung together a full season. So the closest he got 22 games in 2022, but he missed 4 games last year, missed a handful of games in 2021, and then obviously 2020 was his debut season. We can't really judge that as injury proneness, but he's yet to play a full season. So is that something that you need to tick off personally? Do you need to see a player play a full season before you commit to them as a pick? Some people do. Some people like getting hurt every year. I'm probably in the latter category because I want to be that guy who has the player who does finally break the mold and hope that everyone just stays scared of them for the entire season. But it is high risk. It's high risk, high reward. This man has never played a season where he's missed no games. And despite that, we're actually locking him into missing 2 out of his first 12 games. Now, can we swing that into a positive? Will the 2 buys, round 3 and 12, will that give him enough rest during the season to keep him fresh? And then sort of get him ready for that second half of the season like he had last year. Obviously, that's not something that we can predict, but maybe it could help. But you're signing up to someone who's never played a full season before and is guaranteed to miss 2 of their first 12 rounds. So look, I think it's a tough sell from that perspective, because we do look at these early buy players and you compare them to, if you want to do the maths, essentially if you think Tom Green averages even up to 120, which I'll allow because I think it's entirely possible, if he does that for the first 6 rounds, give people about 6 to 8 rounds to try and make him, even if he's their first upgrade, let's say 6 to 8 rounds before they can line that up for themselves. If he averages 120 in that time, first of all, he's going to be a bit more expensive, but round 3, you're essentially fielding a rookie who's going to score between 40 and 60. Everyone sort of goes towards 60, but since when do we have 60 averaging rookies just rotting away on our pine? It's been a lot of seasons since I remember having players that I was confident were going to score 60 plus just sitting there on my bench. So let's just say 40 to 60, especially with the sub. You could be looking at something lower, you could be looking at something higher. So in that range, if we say 50, 120 for the first 6 weeks with a 50 in there, it does bring that average down. Someone like Jordan Dawson can go 116 in that time. I need to make sure this math is actually correct because there's every chance it's not. So I need to see here. Let's bring this calculator up over here. So we got 120. We want to times that by we'll say 5, and then we want to just plus 60 on the end of that, or 50. Well, plus 50 on the end of that as well. I can't believe I'm doing this live as we go here. So that's 6 matches. So if we divide that by 6, he's averaging 108 in that time. Even with a 120 average in the first 6 matches, if you throw in a 50 there, it just kills it. It kills the average. So is the guy that you're comparing him to, and as a non-buy round player, is he going to average more than 108 in the first 6? You would hope so. If you can't get him for 8 rounds, for example, it starts to become a little bit more of a question of, can he chase them down? Can he put more points on the board? What if he starts off and you think his fixture run for the first 5 games is incredible, and he goes 130 for the first 5 games? Entirely possible. But let's just see. We don't want that. We want times 5, and then we want to plus 50 on top of that. So 700 I could have probably just done this in my head. I don't know why. 700 divided by 6, that gets him an average of 116. A lot of the players that you're comparing him to, around that 620k mark, you want them, this is in 6 games, you want them to be around the 116 to 120 mark. Jordan Dawson, for just a random example, Liberatore, the players that you could be comparing him to, could you see them going 116? You almost want that as a bare minimum. Rory Laird, you want these players going 116 minimum. That's with a 130 average in his first 5 games, in 5 of his first 6 games, and then you take out the bye, and then a 50 with your rookie. The 50 could be worse, the 50 could be better. I just think it's such a tough sell to get someone like this and confidently say they are going to out-average my, any other player I could pick, because I think it's a hard sell. I think you're probably locking yourself into an early loss, and then by that point, people might have him already anyway. Unless you think he's going to maintain a 680k price range where people will just pass up on him, and then he's got 10 weeks to chase it down, then he's got 15 weeks to chase it down. Absolutely, that's possible. That could happen. But you're trying to hit someone who has shown a low floor in the past. I wouldn't say low floor, but we just went through them. He had a 77. He had an 89 backed up by a 77. That's a big price drop right there. I think it does actually show here what happened with his price. So in this period here, he lost enough to go down to 530k. If we say he starts hotter, even if he does have a patch like this in here, even if it's this one here, you can see the toll that it takes, it just starts chipping away. And if he's at 650k, we're not looking at 10k, 13k drops. We're looking at 35, 40k drops with scores like that. The higher they are, the harder they fall. So I guess what you're weighing up is this buy situation, how well he can possibly do until other people start getting on board anyway. If you don't start him, he almost has to be a priority. If you think he can do that 120 range, he has to be one of your first upgrades, and it's almost like you have to just swallow whatever price that he puts out there and just cop it, because if you have that sort of belief in him, I still don't think it makes him a great starting pick, but I think it makes him your first upgrade, and you almost want to spend whatever you can to get him in, unless you're willing to wait for these lower games, which could potentially happen as well. If we look at the fixtures, West Coast, Gold Coast, St Kilda, there are Windhagers. There are teams that could throw someone his way. Sydney typically tag. Whether they do this year, I'm not quite sure. The main one is Hawthorn. That's in round 13. Look, you could see a matchup with McGuinness there, but that's coming straight off the bye. That's going to make things tough regardless. So I think you want him by that point. I think he's got capability to put out a string of good games here in a row. But whether you need him for this early stretch, considering he hasn't beaten up on these teams in the past, I still think he will this year. But he hasn't done it in the past. Is it that urgent? If he had a 140 average against those teams, again, we're talking more calculations. We're talking more possibilities in him just outscoring whoever else you might pick there. Let's just finish off on the room for improvement. We've spoken about that a lot. He averaged 32 possessions per game. Where does he improve? His efficiency was very up and down last season. Will this have it? It might not. Okay, maybe just take my word for it. You can see here, actually, 34 possessions. Doesn't do a lot wrong here. Only 2 tackles, but 111 Dream Team to 99 SuperCoach. You can tell that's probably a low efficiency game. And then so we got the 30 possessions here for a 97, 35 possessions here for an 89. That's a low efficiency game. If you can lift that efficiency, then we're talking some very, very, very good games, some very high games. And you can see a lot of these games, they do have the efficiency. 38 and 3 goals, that doesn't get more efficient than that. I think he has the room to improve. I think he could push that 120. He has to improve his efficiency, and he has to come out with an absolute monstrous start in those opening rounds. If you're just looking for ranking, if you're looking for just league, well, it's a whole nother ball game. League doesn't even start until after round 3. If that's the case, you can start him guilt-free. You might even get a POD on players in your league who do play for ranking, and that is an extremely, extremely tantalizing prospect. So I hope this helped with Tom Green. If you want a response from me, I'm not exactly here to give it, but I will lay out all the pros and cons that I see. That's going to do it for the first episode of this newer type of batch of videos. I'm not sure what Jesus is going to call them, so for future episodes, I'll probably call it by the correct episode. I apologize in advance. What do you think of Tom Green? Will he be in your starting team this season? Do you play for league or do you play for ranking? I feel like that's an important thing to divulge if you are saying whether you're going to be picking him or not. Please do comment down below. Did I miss anything? Are there any secret stats that you found on Tom Green that you think might help or harm his case? I think the main things is that he hasn't played a full season yet. That round 3 bye is extremely punishing for players who play for ranking. But I can see the upside. I can see the 120 average. I can see him improving his disposal efficiency and GWS improving as a team to put out what he put out in the second half of last season. I hope this helped. I would love to hear the comments down below which way you're leaning, and I'll catch you in the next episode.